Okay, so we were talking about my dad's feel for football. Training camp started. He's not there, which I know burns you up a little bit inside, but you have a lot of training camp experience. And I thought I would tell you what it's like now because it's a whole different thing than when you were covering. And then you could tell me what it was like back then.
I would
Does
love
that sound
to.
good?
Yeah.
Okay. So today, this is what a day's like at training camp. You pull up, you take your bag, it gets sniffed by a bomb sniffing dog. That's the beginning. Then you walk down the way and you answer questions. Have you been around someone with COVID? Do you have a cough, a fever, indigestion? They take your temperature, you're good to go. At 10:15, you walk on the field. There's like a 20 by 40 box that you're allowed to stand in, no matter where the players are practicing or how far, how close they are. You have a little pen, a media pen. It's an hour and 45 minutes. Practice ends, players walk one way, you walk the other, you walk off the field. You never actually get a face-to-face interaction with them. And for me, since there's no media room this year, I go straight back to my car, turn on the AC and write, and then I go home. And you do the interviews from your phone and laptop over Zoom. That's covering training camp in 2020. What was it like back when you were at the Chronicle?
Iggy, what do you mean by a media pen?
Like there's like a designated area for us. 20 yards by 40 yards.
Is it chalked off?
Yes, they actually had, how there's paint on a football field. They put a red line for us, just so we know.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
And you all have to congregate in that area, even though we have COVID.
Right, and they say that it's for the players' safety and for our safety, but it's just a way to take access away from us because that's what football teams want to do most of the time. Most football teams.
Yeah, that's what they're about. They're about I don't want to say lying, although there's a lot of that.
Restricting access.
Restricting and withholding. Yep. Okay. I have a lot of stories about, I'm thinking mostly when they used to travel up to Rockland, up to that community junior college. And
some younger people may not know that they didn't always do training camp at Santa Clara. They used to travel up to outside of Sacramento.
Yeah, it was east of Sacramento. Rockland, maybe a 2-hour drive away. It was very hot up there. And they were there for years. Some of their great teams were up there. And, what would happen was I and Ira Miller, we would go up, we would get hotel rooms nearby, and we would spend, I swear, Iggy, maybe a week up there. And you really, it's like spring training in baseball where you really make your connections with the coaches and with the players. And I had some very interesting experiences there. For example, maybe young people don't remember Charlie Young. He was a Super Bowl winner with them. He was a tight end. And eventually Russ Francis took over for him. I love tight ends. They're very interesting. I want to say for the most part, I love tight ends. I'm not so sure I do right now. But anyway, so they had brought in training camp Russ Francis. And Charlie Young knew his days were limited there. So he said to me after a day's practice, Lowell, why don't we take a walk? There's a little creek, there's a little stream out by the end of the campus. And why don't we just sit in the shade and talk? Iggy, could you imagine this happening now?
It would never happen.
So he told me on the record that, nothing against Russ, who's a great guy, but they're going to see they made a mistake, blah, blah, blah. And I believe Charlie was wrong. Okay. Uh-huh. But in any event, he was pissed, and he didn't care what Bill Walsh thought or what any of them thought. So at one point, it was a really hot day. It was 4 p.m. We're by this creek, and I see this crayfish crawl out. And I say to Charlie, it's interesting. Look, the little crayfish. And he goes, oh, Lowell, that's not a crayfish. That's a lobster. So I said, Charlie, lobsters are in the ocean. This is a freshwater thing. It's a crayfish. And he says, Lowell, I know what I'm talking about. That's a lobster. And we went back and forth on that. And I ended up writing my column about sitting with him at the creek and debating if it was a lobster or a crayfish, because that's how he was. He was quite a personality. He's one of my favorite all-time guys. Anyway.
Do you remember where he was from?
Well, he was from Fresno and he went to USC.
Good to know. Thank you.
So thanks for asking. And a brilliant, warm, captivating man. He moved up to Seattle after he retired. So I went up at 49er Seahawks game. I'm sitting in the press box, and he's in the press box. He's watching, and we hadn't talked. Iggy, he sits down next to me in the game while the game's going on. He goes like this, and he goes, "It was a crayfish. I know." He said, "I was just messing with you. It was a crayfish." You love it, right?
Messing with you. Yes, that's a great story. I love
yeah,
that.
and that happened.
That's great.
Okay, another time.
So he's a total character?
Total character, but of the most delightful, wonderful kind. I just loved him. Now, Steve Young up there. You want to, Steve, could we talk after practice? Sure. Whatever you need. Can you imagine going to Jimmy and saying, Jimmy, can we? And Steve says,
well, Jimmy might say yes, but he just wouldn't have anything to say ever. He's like, you want to listen
to me? He would meet you. I want to tell you how we met. So Steve says, it's really hot. It's a school. Let's meet on the side of this building and sit down by the side of the building. We'll be in the shade. We'll talk as long as you want. Could that happen?
No.
This is Steve Young, who's going to be in the Hall of Fame.
You might get 90 seconds with Jimmy while a PR operative stands and eavesdrops. Yeah, that's it.
Steve and I were sitting on the floor, on the ground, leaning against the building, and we both say, God, it's really hot. And I said, you know what, Steve? I have a bunch of change in my pocket. I saw a soda machine around the way. How about if I get us a couple of Cokes? And he goes, oh, Lowell, I don't drink Coke. And I said, why? He goes, I'm Mormon. I don't drink caffeine. It's a stimulant. And it was so interesting. Of course, I knew he was a Mormon, right?
Yeah. Right.
But I didn't even think it through that he wouldn't do that. And I'm going to use a mixed metaphor. He was kosher.
Yes, he was. And you respected him for it, right?
Oh, tremendously. Iggy, I respected him tremendously that he wouldn't say, could I have a sip of your Coke? He would rather be thirsty. We must have talked for an hour, Iggy. He would rather be thirsty than go across against his traditions.
Yeah, I respect that. My wife is the same way. She keeps kosher in her Indian culture, and it's one of the more endearing things about her.
Yes, Grant's wife Swasti. When they come here, we never serve pork or beef because she simply won't eat it. And boy, do I respect that about her. And in that regard, she's very much like Steve Young. And I learned that at Rockland that day. He was essentially putting himself out to talk to me. And we talked for I'm saying easily an hour. And, Iggy, he started with, how you doing, Lowell? What's new? What are you reading? I'm engaged to be married, things like that. This could not happen now. Finally, Bill Walsh up there. He had this big bike with balloon tires, like when I had a Schwinn when I was young, but it was really big. And he would ride all around on his bike.
Like a beach cruiser?
I don't know what a beach cruiser is.
Okay.
But a big thing with balloon tires. And he had one of those little bells like a kid would have. And if he's getting behind you, you go, and you'd move out of the way. Okay. So I remember one of my fond memories of Rockland is Bill just tooting around like anybody on his bicycle and ring-a-ling, ring-a-ling, ring-a-ling. Well, he told me a funny story later on about Rockland. He wanted all his players to be in shape. So Bill Walsh was concerned that Bubba Paris was overweight, and he would make Bubba weigh in every morning before practice. If Bubba listens, Bubba, it's a funny story. Please don't be upset. Bill really cared for you, and you know that I like you, and you and I used to josh each other a lot. So Bill thought every day his weight was down a little bit, and Bill thought, what a success story. Bubba's really serious, and he's really losing weight. So one night, Bill goes to a pizza place, to grab a quick pizza because he had meetings in the evening. And he told me that the owner said to him, boy, the big guy comes in here every night. And Bill said, what do you mean the big guy? He goes, Bubba, he gets a pizza every night. And Bill said, I thought he was on a diet. And the guy says, I don't know, but the big guy comes in here every night. So Bill, the next day they weighed him, Bill looks, and Bubba's standing on the scale, but nearby is some boxes. They're piled up, some boxes, and he somehow puts his hand on the boxes, and that makes his weight a little lighter. So Bill says, Bubba, why don't you take your hand off the boxes? And his weight went up. And I think Bill fined him. And then Bubba, of course, lost weight and was in great shape and was a great player. But that's another Rockland story.
Is it true that What? Keep going.
No, I'm saying, and this is Iggy, you're in a different world. You could
No.
never have these experiences.
Is it true that Bill went around to various fast food joints around the Niners facility and said, please don't serve Bubba Paris, please? Is that true?
You know what? It resonates, but I can't say 100% true.
Okay, fair enough.
Did I once tell you that?
I thought you did, but if you didn't, I don't want to put that out there for Bubba. But that would have been a pretty funny thing to do.
I forget things. I simply don't know the answer to that.
Okay, fair enough.
And I can tell you one other thing that they would have lunch and dinners there.
That's what I was gonna say.
And the media was invited. Now, we didn't sit at a table with the players. There was a media section, but it was right in the same room. The coaches sat separately, not with the players. The players sat separately. We all got our food from the same stations. And sometimes, some of the players, Dwight Clark, they would come and sit with us. They were friendly. It's not like that now. I mean, we were in the same room eating.
No, when I started on the beat in 2011, they had already moved us outside. So the players and coaches could sit inside, and we were like second-class citizens, but at least we were eating in the same zip code at the same time. Now they don't even serve us food. And again, it's all because for our safety.
I understand.
Hey, you get less food, less access, but it's for your own good. Okay, fair enough. What are you going to say?
Okay.
I probably wouldn't accept the food if they gave it to me. I mean, really.
I'm not complaining particularly about how it is now. I'm just showing the difference. And when I was covering these great teams in the 80s and early 90s, it was really a lot of fun. Mariucci would be in there. He would come. He would talk. You would eat in the same room. You want to talk to Mariucci after practice? Steve, you got 10 minutes after practice? Yeah, Lola. And there would be a picnic table. And I remember one time, Steve and Ratto and I sat and we talked for 10, 15 minutes. We both did our interview together. He asked his questions, I asked mine, and we went about and did our business. I don't see that happening now.